Today, we are taking Keltullis on a double date. What's up everybody, it's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, the Witcher themed card game, and we'll be playing more of the new +1 seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which we will spawn an extra copy of every unit that we play. And that got me thinking, what if we played a Keltullis themed deck and made it so that we could, well, get a bunch of units to be destroyed, and that seemed like that'd be a lot of fun. So let me show you what I'm thinking we can do from a deck standpoint here. So that means that we'll be playing on monsters with the Carapace ability, and the general theme of the deck is to build around Keltullis here, which is a card that when played in the melee row, at the end of our turn, will destroy the lowest unit on the side with the most units. So what we want to do is we want to play it in the melee row, and we'll make a point of blocking it, protecting it, and because in the +1 seasonal event, we create a spawned copy of every unit that we play, that means we'll have 2 Keltullises on the playing field, meaning that this ability will trigger twice at the end of our turn, and means that we can destroy a ton of units on the opposing side. So that is the key thing here. And so what we want to do is we want to limit the number of units that we play on our side of the playing field so that when it comes to us playing Keltullis, it's going to be destroying our opponent's units, not our own. Otherwise, of course, this could backfire on us. So that means that we are limiting the number of units that we have, and we are doing things like using Consume to further limit the number of units that we have out there, and loading up on things like special cards. So we have Oneiromancy, which means we can play any card in our deck. That'll be one of our most reliable ways of making sure that we get the chance to play Keltullis itself. Then we have Yghern, which is mostly just a big, tall unit that we'll play when we need a bunch of extra strength. And like I was saying, we will have some Consume in our deck, so this is always a very strong Consume target. Then we'll have Triangle Within a Triangle, which is one of the new cards from the Way of the Witcher expansion. There are a few of them in this deck, although it is largely a deck that is based on what is the usual Keltullis theme setup here, with just some minor changes, this being one of them. So if you have not yet gotten the chance to open many of the new packs, then you can make this deck work with some minor modifications, and or opening up a few packs or spending a little bit of ore, you might find yourself able to pick up these other cards here. So Triangle Within Triangle is a special card, so again, we want to have lots of those, that we are limiting the number of units that we have, and this can either boost our own units, which is probably what we want to do, because that way we are using the few units that we have, getting them as strong as possible, or we could deal a lot of damage to an opposing unit. Reason why that's probably not as enticing is because that means that we might be destroying an opposing unit, and we want to have our opponents with far more units than we have because we have Keltullis. After that, we have Cave Troll, which is another important piece. This will be our defender, which we will likely play in the melee row in order to protect both Keltullises, because remember, we'll have the original Keltullis, which will have its starting 9 strength, which is pretty tough to take down unless you have something like a Geralt of Rivia to immediately destroy it. But the copy of Keltullis that will get spawned in will only have 1 strength. So under other circumstances, that would be a very easy target, the copied version of Keltullis, and our enemy might take it out in 1 turn fairly easily. So that's why having something like a Cave Troll is very important in this deck. Then we have Ozzrel, and this is one of our other strong units for, say, rounds in which we aren't using Keltullis, because of course Keltullis doesn't have resilience, so it can be a really strong setup for 1 round, yes, but that's only 1 round and we still need to win another. So Ozzrel is maybe one of our best cards for other rounds in which we are not playing Keltullis, because we can consume a card from either our own graveyard or our opponent's graveyard, and that's another reason why having Yghern is so big, because that's a 13 strength unit that we can consume with Ozzrel. Then we have Alzur's Double Cross. This is a card that allows us to play the highest unit from our deck. This is most of the time going to be either Yghern, that is technically our strongest unit, which is not a terrible thing to be playing Yghern out of our deck. But if it's not Yghern, say we have Yghern in our hand at the moment, or we've already played Yghern in a previous round, or it's on the playing field right now, then our second highest unit would be Keltullis. So it's not a guaranteed way to get Keltullis, but it is potentially another means by which to get Keltullis, because what with this being the key card with this setup, we want to make sure that we have as many ways as we possibly can to make sure that it ends up in our hand and isn't just sitting in our deck doing nothing. Next, we have Dol Dhu Lokka, which is another one of the new cards. It is legendary, so this would normally be one of the hardest ones to get of the new cards. However, this one is actually redeemable from the reward book. So if you have a lot of extra keys, you can make it happen that way. That's how I got this card here. So no packs necessary to find yourself with one of these. So this is interesting because it's actually somewhat different in what it does relative to Keltullis in that it does create new units. So this is definitely a card that we want to be playing in a round when we are not playing Keltullis. So this does give us either a Succubus, a Fuka, a Chimera, or a Hybrid. We get the choice to play one of those whenever we play this card. Which one we choose will depend a little bit on the scenario, but I think most likely what we would end up doing is we would either choose to play the Chimera, which is a unit, yes, but is a unit that has Consume, so it's in some ways still a way to limit the number of units that we have out there. Or we could play a Hybrid, which is a card that gets boosted every time we consume a unit. So that's when we aren't playing Keltullis, definitely something we'll be doing a lot of is consuming. Even when we have Keltullis, we'll still be doing consuming. It will also allow us to move the highest power unit to the top of our deck, which, as we were saying before, would start off being Yghern, but if we've already done something with Yghern, then next on the list would be Keltullis. So this is another way to help set up getting Keltullis in our hand. So in many ways, it's almost like we want to play this in the first round, set ourselves up to make sure that we can get Keltullis for a subsequent round. And when we do that, we will spawn a drone on either side of the card, which is just a little token insect with 1 strength. But that is important for reasons I will show you in just a second. Because the next card is another one of the new ones. This is one that you would need to get via a pack or via creating it through scraps. Yghern, which has the ability to consume all tokens on the row in which it is located and gain immunity, as long as we only have 3 cards or fewer in our hand at the time. That is why we might want to have the drones from that card we were just looking at previously, and or another card that I'll show you in just a second. Tokens are the types of cards that are usually just weak things like drones that you can spawn relatively easily. But again, this is one of those things that if you're creating a lot of these, that's kind of counterintuitive with the whole Keltullis strategy of minimizing the number of units you have on your side. So you want to be a little bit careful of this. But we do have a lot of consume, and this is a way to consume all of the tokens in one turn. So for that reason, what might otherwise be a bit of a liability is a way for us to remove all those tokens and limit the number of cards that we have. So this is ideally a card that we play when we are not using Keltullis. So we play it in a different round, and then we can do all the consuming then. But because it is consume, even if it is in the same round as Keltullis, not the end of the world. Next on the list is, I believe, what might be the last of the new cards, or at least one of the last of the new cards. It's the Wererat, and this is another unit that can consume. What it does is that when we use its order ability, it resets the unit's power and spawns a number of rats in the row equal to the amount of boosts that Wererat lost. Let's unpack that a little bit. So that means that if Wererat is boosted above its 5 starting strength, say it was at 7 strength, we use its order, it gets bumped down from 7 back to 5, and it sheds off that strength in the form of 2 rat tokens. And again, this would be another source of tokens, which would be something that with Keltullis we wouldn't necessarily want to have because we'd be increasing the number of units on our side. But it is also a way to make sure that we have targets for Yghern, the card we were just looking at previously, to consume. So it's another form of tokens for that. And not to mention, Wererat can also, at the end of the turn, consume a unit to the right. So that means that we can do some consumption with Wererat as well. So Wererat, in that way, I think is an interesting combination to play with Yghern, and these are probably 2 of our best cards for playing when we are not using Keltullis in a given round. Similar in that vein is the Beast here, and because we are doing a lot of consuming, that means that we will have a lot of high-strength units and not many of them. And therefore, the Beast, which gets boosted by 2 if it's not the strongest unit on the playing field at the end of our turn, will have a lot of opportunity to do that boosting. So this is another card that either with Keltullis or without Keltullis, either way, could be very effective. Then next we have Parasite, which is either a way to deal a bunch of damage to an opposing unit or boosting our own units. And like we were saying before, for the most part, we want to focus on boosting our units so that way we are limiting the number of units we have and also not taking out units on the opposing side, because if we destroy an opposing unit, then that means that we're more likely to be triggering the Keltullis effect to destroy our own units, which is probably not what we want to do. Next, we have Selective Mutation. This is a way to draw a card with Adrenaline, which at the moment is only Yghern. That is the only card with Adrenaline in our deck right now. So I'm a little bit on the fence as to whether this card is worth including in our deck, because that is, of course, a risk. If we already have used Yghern, or it's on the playing field, it's in our hand, then that means that we aren't actually going to get any draw out of this. But even if that is the case, we can still shuffle one of our worst cards back into our deck, and we can spawn a Witcher student on each allied row, which again is a token. So that means that it is something that we could consume with Yghern. So in that scenario, let's say we don't get the chance to draw Yghern because we've already played it, so we don't get the draw effect out of this. We still get the chance to get rid of one of our weakest cards and play some tokens in order for Yghern to have something to eat. Even in that scenario, I think it's potentially workable, but this is maybe one of the cards in this deck that I'm most on the fence about. So if you don't have this card or you're looking for other ways to use your provisions, then this might be the best option to swap out for something else. Next on the list, we have more special cards, and this is generally the way in which we are going to fill out our deck, is using a bunch of low provision cost special cards to boost our units. So Swallow, boost by 6. Then we have Wild Hunt Riders next, and so these, I'm sure you've seen before, pretty common cards. If we have the highest units out there with dominance, then we will summon all copies of the Wild Hunt Rider onto the playing field. So this is mostly a way to have a relatively low provision cost unit, because of course we've used a lot of high provision cost units already. Also a way to thin our deck a little bit, so that if we play this early, say in round 1, then we are removing some of the weakest cards from our deck, namely the other Wild Hunt Rider, and making it more likely for us to be able to draw the cards that we really want, like Keltullis, our Cave Troll, Yghern, all those cards. So obviously that means that we will have 2 of the Wild Hunt Riders. Next, we have a few Death Wish units, the idea here being that, like we were saying before, we do have some sources of consume, so we want to make sure that there are some good targets to be consumed. We talked about using that with the tokens, but also, if we don't have the chance to spawn any tokens, then we can use some of these units with Death Wish, like the Bridge Troll here. And if we destroy Bridge Troll, then that means that it will boost our highest unit by 4, which, because we're trying to make the few units that we do have on the playing field as strong as possible, would be a strong option. Then we have Crow's Eye for a little more boost. Purification, just make sure that you don't use this by accident on your Cave Troll to remove the Defender. Remember, that is a status, so you can do that. Basically, this is either going to be for Keltullis or any other unit that we do want to make a point of keeping. Next, we have Thaw for more boost and also adding Veil. And again, these are going to be our low provision cost special cards, so that way we are limiting the number of units that we have out there. Then we have Pact. We'll take 2 of those. Gives us 6 boost. Does give our own units doomed. Most of the time, not going to be much of a factor, but just keep a close eye on that. Make sure that you're not setting yourself up for a mistake there. So we have 2 of both the Thaws and the Pacts. Then, more of the low provision cost units. Foglets are very similar to the Wild Hunt Riders that we were talking about before, in that they also can help thin our deck a little bit, and they are also a Death Wish unit, much like the Bridge Troll. We play one of them, and if we can consume it, triggering its Death Wish, then we'll summon the other one from our deck. That way it's relatively efficient in that it's an 8 strength, 4 provision cost unit, once we get the chance to get the other one played from our deck, and also a way to remove one of our weakest cards from our deck, so again, thinning it out, making it easier for us to play the cards that we really want to play from our deck, so we want to play this early to make it possible for us to play our stronger units later on. So we'll take 2 Foglets, and then lastly, we'll have an Endrega Warrior. This would be another source of consumption, and at low provision cost, a convenient one at that. If we do consume any Insectoids, which we don't have many in our deck, but is theoretically possible, then it will spawn some drones, which are tokens, so they are potentially targets for Yghern. So that's what the deck looks like. And now let's get ourselves into the action. So again, we'll be playing in the +1 seasonal event mode. We could, of course, play this deck in standard mode. It is very similar to your standard Keltullis type of setup. The thing that intrigues me most is being able to have 2 Keltullises out there at once, so that's why I have +1 in mind for this setup here. Okay, so we're going against Northern Realms. And I do think that Northern Realms is perhaps one of the best matchups for us, because They usually have a lot of units, and they have relatively weak units that are ones that set up other things, and so they should be fairly simple targets for something like Keltullis. We have Oneiromancy, we have Alzur's Double Cross. We just need to get something else in here so that this doesn't trigger Yghern. Because otherwise, then we won't have the ability to get both Keltullis and Cave Troll in on the same round. And we got Cave Troll. Okay, so we just need to get one. Because now we have Cave Troll, we can use Oneiromancy to get Keltullis. This will still give us Yghern, that's fine. And I think we do prefer to have our opponent go first, if we are trying to use Keltullis plus Cave Troll in the first round here, which we may or we may not. Let's actually take a little bit of a stock of what else we have going on here. Okay, you're going Amphibious Assault, which means you can play any card you'd like. And Immortals, they lose their shield, they get boosted, and they start with the shield. We don't really have damage, or at least we don't need to damage you, so don't really see that triggering all that often. Does mean that it's going to be hard to get dominance, or at least we won't get dominance immediately, so maybe we save our Wild Hunt Rider. Just thinking about what other alternatives might we have if we don't want to go with Keltullis, Cave Troll this go round, because not sure there's much. Could use Alzur's Double Cross to get ourselves Yghern, and then consume Yghern plus Bridge Troll, which is maybe good enough? Huh. No, I think we go for it. I think we go for it immediately. We start with Cave Troll. Should be in the melee row. It's protecting Keltullis, because Keltullis does need to go in the melee row. And Northern Realms does have some special cards that deal 5 damage, or at least one in particular, that's pretty common for people to include, so I think we do want to boost up using our leader ability, make sure our second Cave Troll is safe. Then those cards allow you to steal the shields. Okay, yeah, I was figuring you probably were going to have some way to destroy your own shields, not just going to rely on us to get rid of them. So that does mean that these ones are going to get pretty heavily boosted, and yes, it will be somewhat difficult to destroy them or get rid of them in any way, unless we can get Keltullis down here, and maybe we can get rid of this one at the very least. However, at the moment, we would be tied at 4 units apiece if we were to go straight into Keltullis here. So I think we want to spend a little bit of time using one of our special cards to boost one of our existing units. Either the Pact or the Parasite. I think we use Pact, because that's a little less flexible. It's only boosting, whereas Parasite can be either boost or damage. In case we do find that we need damage later on, then we can keep that as an option. Okay, so yes, giving you more cards, more units specifically, that is certainly alright. And lots of shield stealing, yes, that is definitely the setup you were looking for. Can we cut it off, though? Now we can definitely go into playing Keltullis, so that means Oneiromancy here. And we use it to get you. And so now you have 6 units, we have 4, so both Keltullises will trigger. And technically speaking, this Keltullis is somewhat safe. It is behind a defender, but if you have any ways to damage random enemies or damage an entire row, then it might go down, and that would be pretty bad. So I know we are spending our leader abilities pretty aggressively here, but this is the main thing that we're trying to set up, and it did destroy not only one of the units that could remove the shields, but one of the ones that was actually getting the shield, so that is definitely big. And yes, they use one of their special cards there to avoid playing additional units, which is a good play. We are a little bit low on the special cards here. Ideally, we would have had a few more, because this one, of course, is a special that brings us into a unit. We do have some consumption, though, so that means that perhaps, even if we do need to play some units, we can get rid of some of them that way. And if we do that, then we could consume the Bridge Troll, which would give us the Death Wish to trigger, which is not a bad thing. But I think for right now, we probably want to keep it simple, stick with specials, unless and until we absolutely need to go with the units. Okay, and they passed, and that's a good play. That is a good play, because that means that now we are both on 6 cards apiece, and they are still in the lead, so we would need to play one more card if we wanted to win, and I think we do that. It is a little bit unfortunate here, because that does mean that we'd, actually, tell you what if we were to say consume? No, that wouldn't quite give us enough. I was going to say, can we find a way to make sure that we play a unit without triggering Keltullis on ourselves? No, I think we pretty much need to go with triangle within a triangle here, which is unfortunate because that is one of our better cards for sure. But I think that is one of the only ways to make sure that we surpass our opponent without immediately destroying a unit with Keltullis backfiring on us. So it means we take round 1. It does mean we're down 1 card, which means we will probably want to pass early in round 2, make sure that we draw back up to 10 cards for round 3. We get our Oneiromancy back. That's certainly good. We can play 1 card and still draw back up to 10 for the last round, and I think that we probably want that card to be Wild Hunt Rider. So let's get rid of one of them. That way we can play one and have the other one get drawn out of our deck. So we'll play the first card here, so we will definitely have dominance active. And then what else would we like to get rid of? I think the special cards at this point are not as relevant as they were when we had Keltullis. And to draw into Yghern is nice. Does mean that Alzur's double cross is maybe not as valuable to us anymore, but we will definitely lead off with the Wild Hunt Riders. And we will likely pass here. So in many ways, we hope that either our opponent plays something that is really strong, and they waste one of their best cards in a round that we were ready to just hand to them, or they play something that is weak and they actually need to play multiple cards before they can surpass us, and they end up going down a card. That's unlikely, because they would need to, take 3 cards to make that happen, and Amphibious Assault is really good. It does have Echo, and they used the first round of it in round 1, so that means they are, in fact, using their last one of those for this round, so they won't have it for round 3. Yes, that is a big card that they did, in fact, I would argue, waste in round 2. Of course, they didn't know that we were going to turn around and pass, although you kind of do need to be prepared for that when you know that your opponent is down a card or 2 going into round 2. It's likely, if they won round 1, that is, that they will pass early in round 2 to set themselves up for round 3. And, you are continuing to play cards in a way that would mean that you are going to be down cards in round 3. This is starting to look like K20 Revenants, or at least the setup for it, given how many units you're spawning here. So we'll see if something like that ends up happening, or you are just preparing to throw, or you forgot that we won round 1, because you are seemingly playing everything. But we'll see if Oneiromancy is a way to set up spawning all the K20 Revenants in the world. Transform an allied Witcher into... Oh, yes, that's one of the new cards that can do more transformations, kind of like K20 Revenants. So maybe that's your new take on it. You can swipe all the shields and make that card extremely powerful. Yes. However, why? Because now you have 1 card remaining for round 3. And in fact, after using those abilities, that means that you... I don't remember if you've already played a card in this round. Yeah, you did. Okay. So, yeah. Maybe they have something really special in mind here. Bringing back all of those cards from their graveyard, using something like what you would normally use with K20 Revenants. They do have a little bit of resilience with those Vandergriffs that they brought over, but it does seem very odd. As for us, though, we have Yghern. That's big. Wererat can be good when we have a long round here, and with 10 cards in our hand, we could certainly make this a long round. Oneiromancy, some flexibility. This is also, I think, helpful. And I do like Wererat plus Selective Mutation can get us Eater. I think we get rid of... Well, actually, is there anything in our deck that we'd like to have? Yeah, Ozzrel or the Beast. Either one of those could be useful. Let's try getting rid of Thaw. Foglet is not really something we want. Well, neither is that one. But I think unless our opponent has something crazy in mind here, which maybe they do, it's looking pretty good for us. Famous last words, of course. But, okay. So I think what we do here is normally you'd be a little bit concerned about waiting to play Yghern because when you wait to play it, it has less armor and therefore is more vulnerable to get destroyed. But because we have far more cards than our opponent, we can wait till our opponent has passed and then be pretty confident that Yghern will be safe. So that's not urgent. I think instead what we want to do is get the combination of Wererat plus Eater out and also get you. So what we do is we actually play you first, and what we're going to do is we're going to create the hybrids. But that actually doesn't need to be in the same row as Wererat and Eater. And I think we deliberately put it in a different row because Wererat is going to take up a lot of space. So let's leave it at that for now. These are, of course, fairly vulnerable. If our opponent really wants to take them out, they probably could. But I'm not sure they're going to prioritize them that much. They're going to focus on their shields instead. And then they have a way of playing the card that removes all the shields from their graveyard and then remove all of them, get a big boost, and they think that's going to be enough. I don't know. I have my doubts. But now I think what we do is we go, I think it's, we go Wererat first, or do we go Selective Mutation into Eater first? Let's double check. So Eater, we won't actually be able to use the Order ability until we're at Adrenaline 3. So maybe we do deliberately start with Wererat. Maybe have it eat a Foglet. We could go with something like that. Sure. Why not? Okay. And then think we, well, I mean, this Wererat's gonna eat the other Wererat. That's probably fine. We only really care about this one. Or, well, I mean, pretty difficult to have two Wererats doing their thing simultaneously. So let's see. Now you have a card that whenever it loses a shield gets boosted. Yes, but what is the point? You have all the shields. It seemed like you did all of your special stuff last time. And now you may not have much left to do. So now, I mean, we could get Eater out there with Selective Mutation. It would actually take a turn to make it happen, because we get Eater after we play this, but it just sits in our hand for a little while. Then we have to play it following turn, and then takes a turn before we can trigger the order. We still would need to have 3 or fewer cards in our hand, and that's obviously not the case at the moment. I think we actually might want to say, get the Foglet out there now, and just have those get consumed. That way these guys will get boosted when the consumption happens. We'll get the other Foglet out of our deck, and that just gives Wererat some food for a little while. And we can also, we might want to trigger this ability soon, in fact. Because at some point in time, Wererat's gonna, yes, when we use the order, de-boost and create all the rats, but we need enough room in the row to create all those. Okay, so yes, you were able to play this card again. Remove all the shields, but even then, you still only got up to 30. Actually, how did you pull that off? I was so focused on Wererat. Ah, renew. Okay, that's how. Sure, still, I'd have to imagine it's not going to be enough. I mean, I'd like to believe we can still outdo that. So, let's now, let's see, I think at this point, what we do is, let's get Eater at the very least. And the card that we want to put back in our deck, I think, is probably Crow's Eye. That's not going to do much for us here. This will spawn some Witcher students, which will give us a little bit more fodder for our consumption. I think we probably do want to trigger Wererat now, because that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rats, which I think was just the right amount to fill our row. And now what we do is we could get Eater out here, and doing so would mean whenever we consume 1 or more units, we spawn a drone in the row, which is dangerous, because that actually means that we will run out of space in this row quite quickly, because every time we consume one, we'll also create one with Eater, which is good. You can sustain the amount of cards you have in that row, but okay, our opponent perhaps realized that they didn't have a chance. So yeah, that's what I would have done in the range row. Would have also been able to consume Yghern with the Endrega Warrior. Just wish we had a little bit more time to actually see that combination played out in full. Okay, so we'll go up against monsters here. Be interesting to see how we match up against them. Will they have a similar setup to what we're using? It's possible. Could certainly happen. As for our starting hand here, we do not have any of the cards we're looking for other than Alzur's Double Cross can give us Yghern on this occasion, because that'll be our highest unit. If we can get Yghern in our hand, that would change things, but oh my goodness, is this hand horrendous or what? We have both Foglets. Never want to see both of them in your hand at the same time. We don't have any of the big cards that we'd like to have. And they are using Thrive, at least at the moment, which would, in theory, be, I would think, one of the best types of setups for us to go against with Keltullis plus Cave Troll. It's just that we can't currently make that happen. So this is a tricky one. I do wonder how we might be able to find our way out of this. So, I mean, we could get Yghern out of this. I'd rather not. I mean, in many ways, I think we can say with confidence that this is going to be a throwaway round. The question then is just how to throw it away, and maybe you throw all the Foglets out there. Of course, this is not the optimal way to play the Foglets, but they are, in many ways, our weakest unit, so maybe just dump them. And then we don't have to worry about them in the future. Okay, you're playing a Yghern. That will definitely trigger your Thrives. And it is something that you could potentially consume in the future with Ozzrel. In a future round, that is. But if not, then that is in some ways actually fortunate for us that they're playing what is one of their better cards in this round when it is not really needed, because we know that we are going to be basically throwing in this first round. And let's deliberately not play our second Foglet yet, because I think that will clearly indicate that that is what is happening here. Let's instead, and this is also not a great card here. In some ways, we do want to hold on to our special cards so that when we do ultimately get Keltullis plus Cave Troll, we can focus on playing special cards, not units. But that is a theory at the moment. It is not yet reality. Mostly just trying to get rid of the bad cards right now. And so at the moment, I'm thinking, I mean, we could consume these here with the Endrega Warrior, but I think there is still some use with the Endrega Warrior. The Foglets are, at this point, absolutely useless. So we definitely get rid of them. And now we have pretty clearly shown that our hand was trash. And so our opponent may realize this and pass. They probably should have. But no, they decide they will play their Endrega Warrior. And that will get their Foglets out of their deck. And they did consume Yghern. But it's mostly the question of, will they consume Yghern from their discard pile with Ozzrel? Otherwise, if not, they invested pretty heavily in getting him this round and just should have played it in round 2 or 3. Of course, there's no way they would have known that we had a terrible hand. But this is definitely where we pass. We'll draw back up to 10 cards, and our opponent did play one more card than us. So it does mean that, technically speaking, we do have card advantage going into round 2 here, which is nice. But most of all, we're just looking for us to pick up something to help us out with drawing the cards we're looking for. And we did get Oneiromancy. That can give us one of the 2 cards we need, but not both. Let's try getting rid of Eater. Got Swallow, still not really what we're looking for. Bridge Troll into the Pact, still no. Still no. So, tell you what, we can put the highest unit in our deck at the top of our deck with this. So I think we do want to make sure that we make this happen this round. How else can we get by? Well, so that will be, at the moment, that would be Yghern. But that would mean that we either draw into Yghern for sure in round 3, or if we play Alzur's Double Cross in this round and get Yghern now, then that means our second highest unit in all would become our highest unit still in our deck, and that would be Keltullis, so we'd be guaranteed to get Keltullis on the draw for round 3. But that's still an awfully long ways away. Right now, we just need to be concerning ourselves with not losing in this round, because that would be an issue. I think we go this first, and we will use the hybrids to get boosted when we do some consuming, because I'm thinking then we will go Selective Mutation and use that to get Eater, and then we'll have Eater try to do some eating. And we hope that we can sneak by with that, but our opponent has played Haunt, which is, of course, a very strong unit, and Runa could certainly swipe some of our cards here if our opponent chooses to consume, which, with Haunt, they can certainly do. They also have their leader ability, which I was thinking they might opt to use here, but no. The Barghest are enough. So, that is rather concerning in that case. We can still use our order ability here, but I think we want to wait just a little while longer. We want to use Selective Mutation now. Get Eater. And then we can put a card back in our deck. What would we like that to be? I mean, it could even be Endrega Warrior and just have as many special cards as possible, but that's mostly for when we're using Keltullis and the Cave Troll. It's not so useful right now. I think we just get rid of one of our weaker special cards. And this does give us a token. So we'll use this ability next, create more tokens in this row, and then Eater technically does need to wait until we're at Adrenaline 3 before we can use that consumption, so that is a little bit of a concern. But we can also consume with the Endrega Warrior, and when we do that, Eater will create more tokens in the same row, so I think that's probably what we go for here. But meanwhile, our opponent is going crazy with the consumption, and it's going to be hard to keep pace with that. We could even consider deliberately using Oneiromancy to get Keltullis without the Cave Troll, and just not have the luxury of having the extra defender from the Cave Troll, and just hope that our opponent does not have the ability to take it out. They have already used their card that can seize things, so we know they won't be able to, at least don't think they'll be able to seize a 1-strength Keltullis. So tell you what, that's starting to look like we're in Code Red territory here. I think we need to see if we can pull this off by doing something a little bit crazy, because they certainly have more units than us right now. Let's throw on Carapace for this weaker Keltullis just in case. Get it up to 7, in case if they do have, say, something like a Parasite to deal 6 damage. That way, it still will not be able to go down in 1 hit. We've certainly got their attention. There is that much. These guys here that can come back when they get put into the graveyard, that is potentially good counter to Keltullis, yes, but those are not the weakest units at the moment. Certainly not. Well, you'll consume them here, so they will go back to the graveyard and then come back, because I believe they had one more time which they could do that. Yeah. And so at this point, let's see, next on the list would be Night Wraith would go down, as well as Endrega Warrior. Endrega Warrior would just be losing a 1-strength unit on their side. Night Wraith would spawn more rats in their row, which is actually kind of a bad thing, because that gives them more 1-strength units that Keltullis will be taken out, and that's not really what we want. We want to start to get the big ones. So, we can use Eater and start the consumption after that with the Endrega Warrior, yes. Problem with that is that was based largely on assuming that we were not going to have Keltullis down, and obviously now we do. So, I think at this point, we're going to be just using our boosts to get Keltullis higher up. There, the rats coming in, like we were saying. That gives them more easy Keltullis fodder. Not going to be a huge loss for them to lose those 2 rats. And tell you what, they probably should pass right now, because this would take us a while to deal enough damage to surpass them. And that's easier said than done when we have Keltullis out there, because we can't exactly just go playing units willy-nilly. Okay, oh, you did still have dominance? You do, yeah. You do. So, now I'm looking at triangle within the triangle. This would be our best way to boost Keltullis for 13. Or we could deal damage to a unit based on its provision cost, but I don't think you have anything that's a high enough provision cost to be worth it. I'm actually surprised this only costs 10. But with only 5 strength, it's not a huge thing to get rid of it, especially at this point in time. I mean, it would stay in the graveyard because it's used all of its charges for that. But, yeah. I think at this point, we go triangle within a triangle, maybe on the weaker of our two Keltullises. And we just continue to try to whittle away on their side, and they only have one strength unit left, but of course they play one more unit and it'll create a 1 strength copy of it, so we'll be destroying that as well. So still going to take us a while before we are getting at the big things. Oh, and Ozzrel is not what we want to see. What do you have to consume? You did play Yghern last time, did you not? You did, yeah. So, yeah, that's problematic. So next time round, Keltullis will destroy Rat and Ozzrel, the weak version. And that means, yes, at that point we'll be rid of all of your 1 strength cards, but it's a long time we had to wait. We did delay a little bit before we put down Keltullis because it did seem like we were at least initially hoping we could find a way to get it done without it, but you saw how that was seeming to go. So I think at this point what we do is we need to play Eater here. That'll give us a weak one, but that doesn't matter much. And we still have definitely fewer units than our opponent, so that's fine. But we are setting up the Eaters. Okay, yeah. So we hope that at this point, we will still be able to surpass our opponent. They've passed early. I'm still not sure if that's going to be possible for us because we have limitations as to what we can actually play here before we start being at risk of consuming our own or destroying our own units with Keltullis. So, especially when we do start using the Eaters, I mean, it is technically something that we do probably need to make happen because that's our way into getting the highest number of points here. But it's not going to be easy. So I think next we actually do want to rush a bit to get the drones out, do we? I think we kind of need to boost right now, though. Let's boost, and then we'll actually try to keep you around. I say maybe we want to rush to get the drones out early because we know that Keltullis is going to continue to whittle away on the opponent's side, and so their number of cards is going to keep on getting lower and lower. Whereas if we start spawning the drones and things of that sort, then our number of cards is going to get higher and higher, or at least it's going to be high for a little while until we do the consumption. So for that reason, I was thinking we want to finish using all of our tokens early before our opponent has few enough cards that they will have fewer than us. So I think we do this, spawn you, and then we consume with the Endrega Warrior. And then, oh, I thought that was going to consume an insectoid? What? Oh, it didn't have room to do it. Okay, gotcha. So now, okay, now we're at least getting to the big units that are getting destroyed, or at least close to it. So now we could pass, and Keltullis would still trigger twice, I believe. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units compared to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you would lose your next two lowest, which would be you and you, or basically just 4 and 5, which would be 9, lowering you down to 69, which is still not low enough. So, yes, I think we still need to go further. We still need to, say, Parasite. Shouldn't really matter who we do it on. I think we need to We'll do this. And then we'll do this. And then we'll do this. And then they lose 2 cards, and now it is enough. Okay. So we've rescued it, kind of, sort of. But it did require that we go way down in cards. We might have been able to save our leader ability. We probably could have. But it did mean that we were going to lose, or our opponent was going to lose another round of cards after we did end up passing another time. So now we have Yghern. There's that. We have Oneiromancy, which means that we could, say, use... Well, we could use the Cave Troll that we wanted to get last time, or we could throw in the Beast. That might be the best combo to go with Yghern. And then Crow's Eye, we definitely don't want you. Or the Bridge Troll. Wild Hunt Rider. Do we still have the other one? We do. Could play that first, because, I mean, if we are going to play it, then that is the best time to make it happen. It's still definitely the weakest card of what we have here. What does Alzur's Double Cross give us? Gives us the highest unit, which would be Cave Troll. Which is, I mean, it's not nearly as meaningful when we no longer have a Keltullis to protect, but I suppose we'll do this first. Make sure we're getting the dominance to trigger. That is important, otherwise it's a very bad card. I mean, it's a decent card here. It's just that we need amazing on this occasion, given how far down we are in terms of the number of our cards. Unless our opponent has truly botched their hand. They also have 3 rounds of their leader ability remaining. And now they do have dominance for this, because that's a 5 strength card. Okay, but we could play Yghern now. Well, actually, no, tell you what, I think we need to go Cave Troll first, because Yghern, if we were to play it now, would have only 2 armor, so just about anything could destroy it. So I think what we really need is to do this. Let's just double check that this gives us Cave Troll, right? It does. Okay. And we do need to do that now, because Cave Troll now, to protect Yghern, Yghern needs to go in the next turn. And because otherwise we play Yghern last, we have no cards in our hand, meaning it has no armor, meaning it instantly destroys itself. We would have liked to have had time to, say, put down something like a Beast to get boosted, but we just would have needed 1 more card to give us a little more time to make that happen. Just won't work here. So, yes, unless our opponent does something very silly, damage themselves. Okay, bleeding is it's not that strong. It is going to be enough to destroy this Cave Troll, because I don't think have any way of boosting it back up, but not really a huge loss. It's a 1 strength unit, and we don't need a second defender on this row, especially not when we have... we do have Yghern to defend, yes, but... Okay, so let's play this. This definitely comes next. It has precisely 1 armor, so we hope that our opponent does not have any way to deal damage to an entire row. Otherwise, it is still toast. Although if you do that, then we could maybe use Oneiromancy to get Ozzrel, because I don't think we've played that yet. That is still here. That would be an option. Going with the Wererat. Oh, well, Werecat. And yes, that is, in fact, exactly what you were able to do. Why you would play that on the melee row when you could so easily have destroyed Yghern, I don't know. I mean, yes, maybe you were thinking, well, maybe they have an Ozzrel, which is, yes, true, we could have made it happen. But still, that's losing 13 strength to gain 14 strength by following up with the Ozzrel, which is still a bad play on our part. So, what do we do here? If we were to play Ozzrel, we would need to consume something else. We could consume Keltullis. Oh, no, we still have a Yghern, because the copy of Yghern got destroyed. Okay, we can still do that. That's something. We play you in the range row then. Consume... Where'd you go? You? I was thinking we'd have to do this, but remember that we play a copy of Yghern when we used it, except that copy immediately got destroyed because it didn't have the deploy to gain armor. So it did go to our graveyard, meaning that we could consume it here. So that's actually not a bad play here. Again, I would still make the case that they should have played the Werecat in the range row, and then that would have worked very well. That has destroyed lowest enemy units. That'd be this Ozzrel first, and then Wild Hunt Rider after that. That's not a huge problem, unless you have another way to do something like that. But you're out of those cards, and you are close to catching up to us. You know, I thought it was going to be impossible, but it started to look possible once we started looking at things like getting that second Yghern to get consumed by Ozzrel. But absolutely, once you start throwing in those big cards there, we will not be able to catch you for a minute. For just a minute, I had hope that maybe we'd find a way to make it happen, but not quite this time. So there's a look at our double date with Keltullis. Was she worth the trouble? I don't know, I leave that up to you to decide. If you're looking for more Gwent content, then check out our original +1 playthrough when I was using a Northern Realms deck. Also looking to scheme up some new decks with some new Way of the Witcher cards, so be on the lookout for those as well. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more Gwent content in the future, and I'll catch you next time.